So, what really makes a leader's legacy? Is it the grand palaces they build or the just society they create? We're about to dive into a really dramatic prophecy from the book of Jeremiah that puts two royal brothers right under the microscope. It contrasts their reigns and reveals the true and often pretty brutal cost of unjust power.
The prophet Jeremiah kicks things off with this really strange instruction. He says, "Don't mourn the king who died. Instead, you need to save all your tears for the one who's being dragged away into exile, because he is never, ever coming home." It's a total head-scratcher of a command that immediately sets up a mystery.
And that leads us right to the heart of the whole thing, doesn't it? In a culture that valued land, family, and legacy above almost everything else, why on earth would being exiled be seen as a punishment so much worse, so much more tragic than death itself? Let's unpack that.
So first up, we're going to look at the king who goeth away. For him, exile wasn't just moving to a new place. No, it was a complete erasure of his identity. It was basically a kind of living death that cut him off from everything that made him who he was. What's just wild here is the speed of this collapse. You start with the great king Josiah. He was a really righteous ruler. But after he's killed in 609 BC, his son Shallum gets to be king for all of 3 months before he's kicked out and exiled by the Egyptian pharaoh. I mean, that's a breathtakingly fast fall from grace.
So here's the crucial point. Exile was so much more than political. It was a theological crisis. It meant you were cut off from your land, from the temple, which was the center of your entire world, and ultimately from your connection to God. This is why they called it a living death. It was a complete loss of self, a total loss of purpose.
All right, now let's switch gears to the other brother, the one who actually got to stay in Judah and rule. But the prophet Jeremiah has no words of comfort for him, not at all. Instead, he opens up with a heavy, formal curse.
And the charge is incredibly specific. This king is being condemned for building a huge, magnificent palace through pure exploitation. He's using forced, unpaid labor from his own people, which is a direct violation of their most sacred laws, all to fund his own lavish lifestyle.
And this just paints such a vivid picture of how corrupt he was. It wasn't just about building a palace. He was importing expensive cedar from Lebanon, using this rare and pricey red paint called vermilion. But all that fancy stuff was just the outward sign of a much deeper rot. His heart was driven by greed, his reign was defined by violence, and he was totally willing to shed innocent blood to get what he wanted.
Now, to really understand just how far this king had fallen, Jeremiah brings up a really powerful benchmark: the memory of their father, the righteous King Josiah. He becomes the moral standard, the gold standard, that both of his sons are judged against.
So Jeremiah throws this really cutting question at the son, whose name is Jehoiakim. He basically asks, you think you're a real king just because you surround yourself with fancy cedar wood? And then, bam, he immediately contrasts that with their father, Josiah, who also lived well, sure, but his success came from practicing judgment and justice. The message couldn't be clearer. True royalty isn't about architecture, it's about character.
And this right here, this is the central thesis of the entire prophecy. What does it actually mean to know God? Well, according to Jeremiah, it's got nothing to do with religious rituals or expensive buildings. It means you actively stand up for the poor and the needy. Social justice is the real, tangible proof of a relationship with God.
So with the charges laid out and the standard for a good king set, Jeremiah delivers the final verdict on King Jehoiakim. And for a king who so desperately wanted glory and luxury, the prophecy is one of ultimate, poetic dishonor.
The punishment begins with this profound silence. For a king who built a grand palace to make his mark, the prophecy says there will be no public grieving. He'll be so meaningless to his people that when he dies, nobody's gonna care. He'll just be forgotten.
And the dishonor just keeps escalating. It's not just that the people won't mourn him. The state itself, the official court, will refuse to honor him. The traditional cries of mourning for a king, "Ah, my brother," or "Ah, his glory," they won't be spoken for him. It's like his status as king is being erased from history. And then comes the final shocking image: the burial of a donkey. This means no tomb, no ceremony, no honor at all. His body will literally just be dragged out of the city and dumped outside the gates like a piece of trash. For a king, this is the most humiliating end you can possibly imagine.
And history actually records that this prophecy came true. In 598 BC, as the massive Babylonian Empire was tightening its grip on Judah, King Jehoiakim died. His end was pathetic, a forgotten footnote, which perfectly mirrored the beginning of the end for the kingdom he ran so badly.
This ancient story leaves us with a question that feels absolutely timeless. Is a leader's greatness measured by the splendor of their buildings and the power they hold? Or is it measured by their commitment to justice, especially for the most vulnerable people in their society? It's a question about what the true foundation of any lasting legacy really is.